I think it's high time the Bruins finally beat the Zags. But can they break their Gonzaga curse?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free where we get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. In terms apply. Where we get started today, we're talking UCLA basketball in this episode. What's the big game? It's UCLA's toughest matchup to date. They're taking on Gonzaga, one of the big highlighted matchups UCLA signed in the offseason was the unofficial home-and-home series in the non-conference. They are planning to play against Arizona. They already went to Phoenix. Arizona's going to come and eventually play UCLA in the state of California. And then they're going to go play Gonzaga up in Seattle in the next couple seasons. And then they'll play and host Gonzaga this year in the Intuit Dome, the new home of the Clippers, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be a doubleheader. Perfect world. There wouldn't be NFL on a Saturday like there is always at the end of December prior to the new year, and UCLA will be playing prime time at 5. Well, for now, we'll settle for another 1 p.m. early day, third straight Saturday, ironically, where UCLA plays at noon or 1, and our morning will be dedicated to watching the Bruins taking on a big-name foe. And in the end, if UCLA wins 2 out of these 3 games, they're complete contenders. Not complete, but they're immediate contenders to go deep in the tournament. And this tough matchup is probably the one that is the biggest mismatch for UCLA. Arizona, with Krivas hurt, didn't have their big man available to go hurt UCLA. Caleb Love's not hitting a lot of threes. He's not that same guy at this moment that went and hurt UCLA a couple tournaments ago, not the one who won the Pac-12 Player of the Year or helped Arizona win the Pac-12. So UCLA went to Phoenix, came back, and beat Arizona. Then there's the North Carolina team, which, with Caleb Love, beat UCLA in the tournament a couple years ago. They weren't the same team. They've been looking for that win. They've been giving teams 10-point leads to start. The Bruins raced out to a 16-point second-half lead and let it melt away in a game where they had 2 players playing extremely well and just couldn't hold on to a lead in which what would have been a very strong non-conference win all the way on the other coast. Now you take on a Gonzaga team who they sit here with 3 losses, and that's going to hurt the UCLA resume a little bit, but this is a Gonzaga team that's 9-3. They have put up a lot of points in many games this year. The amount of times Gonzaga has scored less than 70, 0. So that's going to be an immediate test for UCLA's defense. The lowest point total Gonzaga has put up this year was in regulation. They lost 77 to 71 to UConn about 2 weeks ago in Madison Square Garden. So it'll be 2 teams whose last losses came in New York, playing on the West Coast as 2 premier West Coast basketball schools. Gonzaga, though, their losses have come in overtime to West Virginia in the Battle for Atlantis, where they lost 86-78, and they did score 70 in regulation. So the lowest amount of points Gonzaga has scored in regulation is 71. They've done it twice. And then they blew a huge lead. They did what UCLA did to North Carolina. They had a huge lead against Kentucky in what was a designated home game, but it was in Seattle at Clement Pledge Arena, so not a full home game like it would have been if it was at the Kennel. And they had 17,000 fans there. Huge lead, 16-point halftime lead, up by 18, 20 points against the Wildcats. Lost that game by 1 in overtime. So they had a huge chance to get a big win against the then top 10 Kentucky team. They've beaten what should have been an Indiana team that was a top 10 contender, not at the moment. Indiana, we'll see how they are in the Big Ten play, but they've spanked them. What a true road game at San Diego State. Beat Baylor by 40. So this is a Gonzaga team that is for real. Where are the mismatches in this game for UCLA that they can take advantage of? Not many, quite honestly. Not many. Where Gonzaga has them is they're a team that is designed to score 80 to 90 points. So you look at their scoring averages, Gonzaga averages 89 points per game. They give up less than 70. All right, so not exactly the Mick Cronin level scoring defense the Bruins have this year, although this kind of reminds me of that matchup UCLA played Gonzaga a couple years ago in Vegas, where Gonzaga just kind of boat raced them at a neutral site game, and the Bruins figured it out later in the year. This is kind of that same matchup because Gonzaga has a total of 6 players averaging double figures. 6 players averaging 10 or more points. All right. And they've got the size that they use to their advantage. Now they're going to run a little bit of more things through Graham Ike, who's 6'9", but I still think poses a mismatch for a guy that scores 50, makes 56% of his shots, makes 15 points per game, doesn't necessarily turn it over all too much in 12 games, a little less than a turnover and a half per game. So he's not overly turnover prone. This is a guy that is an impactful force down low. But I'm not sure this is the guy that's going to hurt UCLA the most. Not the 6'9" Ike, who was the one-time Wyoming superstar and has figured things out at Gonzaga. I think for me, in this UCLA game, you have to look out for a Braden Huff, 6'10", redshirt sophomore from the state of Illinois, comes in, doesn't start, but he generally probably splits time with the big men, almost 20 points per game off the bench, and scores 12 a game with nearly 4 rebounds a game. That's where UCLA tends to get hurt. This is the first team that can nullify the size or can utilize their size in quite some time to their advantage, like the New Mexico game. And they're lights out defensively from 3. Gonzaga is a top 3 defensive team from the three-point land in the country. They only allow 26% under that from 3 from their opponents. And what UCLA needs to win this game is something similar to what Bilodeau and Mack did. Now, they don't need individually spectacular performances, but I think what they need is players making threes. For UCLA to win this game, they need to play how they did against Oregon, right? And mostly not just get up by 10, 13 points and just let it slip away in the blink of an eye. I can see how you guys are feeling in the comments, how it seems to be a repetitive thing where UCLA gets up 10, 15 points, and then they're losing by 8. They're up 19 at Arizona last season, and then they're losing by 8, 9, or 10. They're up big against Arizona, and it takes a miracle comeback to win. They're up 16 against North Carolina. You get the point. You understand the feeling of this team. But now they're finding ways to play against teams that when they're up 10, they're going to fight back. Unlike these mid-major teams, they're going to lose by 15, 20, or the run is only going to get them to 8 points. Not like a North Carolina run. That'll push them to the brink of an upset. This is a game where I think for UCLA to be successful, they're going to need another big game from Eric Dailey Jr. to win this game. I think Eric Dailey Jr. needs to counteract what Graham Ike is going to do. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a 1v1 matchup, but kind of a highlighted matchup. Even if they're not guarding each other, scoring on each other, they're both southpaws. Their games are unique. I think Dailey will take a couple more threes. Both either oversized guards or undersized big men, kind of those in the tweener range. Dailey more the oversized guard, and Ike more the undersized big men who are successful in what they do. And if UCLA is able to get production from Dailey like he did against Oregon, while holding, say, a 6'10" Huff to limited damage, like the Bruins were able to survive with Nate Biddle, Oregon's leading scorer, still doing damage, then another key focus is how is UCLA's defense going to counteract what Ryan Nembhard brings to the table. A veteran point guard who plays 36 minutes per game. Mick Cronin would love to have a guy like this on this team. If he had a guy like this on his team, then UCLA is probably going to win the national championship, right? Nembhard is as valuable as Tiger Campbell was to UCLA as Nembhard is to Gonzaga. He doesn't score a bunch. He scores a little under 12 per game. That's good for 4th on the team. But the number I want you to look at or listen to or think about while you're listening, watching, taking in this podcast, Ryan Nembhard has almost as many steals as he does turnovers. 24 steals, which means he averages 2 steals per game. That's a pretty good number compared to 2 more turnovers than steals. So it's not his assists to turnovers that are almost a 1-to-1 ratio. It's his steals. So every time he gives it up, he gets it right back. So basically, you think about what Nembhard is doing, the Gonzaga point guard, he gets it right back. He has 122 assists while averaging double figures to 26 assists. I don't have the math off the top of my head, but that's an extremely good assist to turnover ratio. And when you add in what he does defensively with the steals numbers, leads his team, and is pretty good again the basketball back, even if he turns it over once or twice. Can mix in a couple of threes. He's shooting 40%. He is the third best three-point shooter. He can do just a little bit of everything. And if you go up and down the Gonzaga stat sheet, you're like, man, why is he fourth down here? He's like their most important player, maybe next to an EK, or you look at Khalif Battle. This is where UCLA, we're going to find out how good the defense is for Mick Cronin. He prides himself on the defense. He wasn't happy about it at halftime against North Carolina. No, he was not. Even though the turnover numbers were big, Gonzaga, with Ryan Nembhard running the show for Mark Few's squad, we will see if UCLA's defense is legit. Or is it just North Carolina threw the ball off their shoe a couple of times? Arizona doing the same thing. Because even when the Bruins have been sliced and diced with easy layups, carving up the Bruins for a couple of minutes at a time in their wins and losses, they've always been able to force turnovers. Even a game where they played as badly as they did against New Mexico, they still found ways to turn over the opponent. And they have one of the best turnovers per game rates defensively across the country. And with the scoring defense numbers, we will know how good the Cronin defense is. Gonzaga has not scored less than 70 points in a single game in regulation this year. All right, even including their overtime loss to West Virginia on a neutral site in the Battle for Atlantis tournament, they still managed more than 70 points. UCLA is going to have to prove they're a legitimate defense, where I think Gonzaga can attack them in multiple ways by shooting the three well enough, being big enough, and having a strong enough point guard that doesn't turn over the ball. These are all, it's making me a little scared about how this one's going to turn out in this game. And then, where I think UCLA needs to be able to attack and account for the scoring the Bruins have to do, Gonzaga is good statistically at defending the three, where I think UCLA has to be able to be successful to win this game. They don't need Bilodeau to go for 26 necessarily. They need an all-around attack, which might lead to a last-second three, because UCLA has lost the last 4 to Gonzaga. They've lost 4 in a row since they last beat them up in the state of Washington. UCLA has not beaten Gonzaga in their home state since Heartbreak City, when Adam Morrison was crying on the floor and the Bruins raced to the first of their 3 Final Four runs under Ben Howland in 2006. They have not beaten Gonzaga in their home state since then. It has been almost 20 years. It's almost been 10 years since they beat the damn Bulldogs. And it might be a little longer. This is a game that's going to impact the seeding line for UCLA or Gonzaga, where they're going to be kept in a West Regional, whether they're going to be that 2 or 3, because regardless, Gonzaga's going to go win the WCC, which is very good this year. If you look at an Oregon State, or Oregon State's pretty tough and scrappy this year. I wonder how the WCC is going to play out. But obviously, Gonzaga is going to reign supreme in that conference for sure. And when it comes down to seeding time, if UCLA and Gonzaga are matched up, do you want to avoid them later? Do you want to be kept in the West Coast after traveling east for the majority of the season? Or are you going to get shifted to a tougher bracket against teams with more of a hometown flavor, as opposed to if that's on the West Coast? That's where this makes a big impact. Because if UCLA gets this big win, that adds a mulligan to what they can use in the Big Ten Conference, where they're definitely going to lose 1 or 2 random games in the road that they shouldn't. That's just going to, for every Big Ten team, every team that's going to travel, UCLA is going to deal with that. So we're going to learn a lot about this team with how they are legitimate defensively. The numbers back it up, but this is the truest test so far. And in my mind, might be the most complete team the Bruins have played. Enough of a mismatch in the post that UCLA can maybe rise to the challenge, but they will be at a severe disadvantage. And then 3, the one thing where they've been trying to grow as a team from last year to this year, the ability to shoot, Gonzaga can nullify that. And which of those things can checkmark for UCLA to be important and win this game and prove that they're a true national contender. I still believe it. I think the jury's still out from most UCLA fans from what they've seen the last couple of Saturdays. And which of these players is going to step up? Sebastian Mack has been a great scoring threat off the bench. Bilodeau generally comes through, although this might be a unique matchup against Gonzaga, where I think Dailey Jr. needs to be the man. And who is that solid veteran presence at point guard? Can Dylan Andrews make a big shot, be a big key factor in this game, or is it the transfer in Sky Clark? Because the backcourt is going to have a lot to handle with a super solid, steady Ryan Nembhard. Absolutely tough matchup. I might actually, I haven't really decided and thought where I would go with this one, but I'm definitely leaning at this moment Gonzaga to win it. Now, how UCLA looks, how they play throughout the game, if it's another heartbreaker, if UCLA loses this game in a heartbreaker, then UCLA is still a very good team and they're a contender for sure. If they lose this by 15, you're going to see another Cronin scream show in the locker room about how bad their defense is, and they will probably improve throughout Big Ten play. If they win this game, oh boy, that's intense. Even though that would be Gonzaga's fourth loss of the year, that's still a huge win for UCLA and a confidence boost with how they can recover and how they can sit with that bad North Carolina loss, that taste sitting in their mouth. Think about that. For how this UCLA team can go. Those are my thoughts in a shorter episode. Like, hey, what's this team going to do? It's a prove-it game. The best team they're going to play so far in 2024, the new season. And it's only going to get tougher with home and road environments in Big Ten play following this. And your last true chance to get a non-conference win stepping up now. You win this, Joe Lunardi's got him as a 4-seed or so. That pushes you in the 2 or 3 seed territory. You lose this, UCLA maybe at best is a 4 seed unless they race through the Big Ten Conference. It's a huge difference between an easy route to the Final Four or scrapping and clawing just to get to the Sweet 16. Which is why we're going to have fun reacting after the game, talking about UCLA Gonzaga. So follow Locked On UCLA, like, comment, subscribe, download that episode. We'll react. We'll talk some thoughts. We'll see if we can get Locked On Zags host Andy Patton on. If not, oh well, but we'll have some fun with it anyway. And we'll talk more UCLA football recruiting in the portal at the quarterback position and what they're doing to look and lock up their 2025 roster. All right. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Again, FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that W because you can love betting on players. Who's going to score a touchdown? Maybe you watch the Thursday night game and you're like, nobody did. That's the fun of it all. Who's going to score a touchdown? And how many points for which team are they going to score? It's thrilling. All of that with FanDuel, because all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. SoCal sports fans, what's one of the greatest things we always get to look forward to every New Year's Day? It's always the Rose Bowl. For me, I love the Rose Parade, but also the Rose Bowl. And yes, maybe the Bruins aren't in there, but you're going to go want to watch the most hyped game of them all. It's always the granddaddy of them all, whether it's a semifinal, a final, or a quarterfinal as it is this year. And what's the most expensive ticket it looks like on the second market? It's the Rose Bowl game. Well, where are you going to go? You want to use Game Time and Game Time picks. And how is Game Time going to help you out? Well, Game Time has an exclusive offer for the Rose Bowl. 10% off tickets in the home corners, away corners, and end zones, which makes prices even better. These exclusive zone deals are specifically in specially selected sections of the stadium where you can find a deeper discount by letting Game Time choose their exact seats for the game. So if you're like, hey, I want to get to the game, Game Time has hooked me up with zone deals every time I've tried to go to a big game. So Game Time is trying to let you do the same with the Rose Bowl game. Take advantage and ring in the new year true in 2025 with a fantastic playoff opportunity. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Create an account, download the Game Time app, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, that's going to do it here for Locked On UCLA. Again, we'll touch a little bit, I think, more on the UCLA Gonzaga game once more, and we'll react post-game to what could be the biggest game of the UCLA non-conference season, potentially their biggest win, maybe crushing defeat, as it's been in recent years under Gonzaga, or what needs to change and go better moving forward into the Big Ten season with the new schools, the new era, the new rivals coming forth in 2025. All right, so we're going to get excited, and we're going to hands up for an 8 clap. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Beat the Zags. Go Bruins.